Chapter 1. The tethered artery. Here is the lateral knee posterior to the left. The popliteal artery is tethered at both ends, fixed at the adductor hiatus above and at the soleus arch below. It cannot slip out of the way, so when the tibia dislocates posteriorly, the vessel is trapped between two fixed points and it stretches instead of escaping. Stretch it far enough and the intima tears, an intimal flap narrows the lumen, and thrombosis can follow, shutting off distal flow. But watch the knee itself. Genicular collateral flow can keep the foot pink and the pulse palpable, even with an injured artery underneath. A normal pulse is reassuring only when the whole examination fits, and when you reduce it, flow usually returns but the flap remains, and it can thrombose hours later. That is why a spontaneously reduced dislocation is still a vascular emergency until it has been properly screened. The same logic runs through the upper limb. The brachial artery crosses the elbow anteriorly, and the axillary artery sits behind the humeral head. Posterior elbow dislocation. The brachial artery crosses the elbow anteriorly. It is one of the structures directly in the line of injury. After any elbow dislocation or supracondylar fracture, check the radial and ulnar pulses, look at hand perfusion, and test median and anterior interosseous function. Document the neurovascular status before reduction, reduce the dislocation, then examine again and document after. A pink hand is not the end of the assessment. An abnormal Doppler or a neurological deficit still needs a vascular decision. Now the shoulder, and this lateral radiograph is the picture that explains the whole risk. The humeral head is displaced deep into the axilla, and sitting right behind it is the axillary artery. This is why an apparently isolated shoulder injury in an older patient can threaten the vessel. An atherosclerotic, fragile artery stretched over a displaced head. Check the pulse before and after reduction. An expanding hematoma or a pulse change after reduction means a CT angiogram now. And the highest energy pattern of all, the tibial plateau fracture. High-energy plateau fractures, Schatzker 4-6, are knee dislocation equivalents. This imaging shows a plateau fracture with a 4 cm popliteal artery occlusion. The limb looked normal. Symmetric pulses do not end the assessment here. Documented vascular screening with ABI or API is used in many trauma pathways even when the pulses feel equal. Chapter 2. Recognizing it, hard signs and soft signs. Hard signs are treated as vascular injury until proven otherwise. Active arterial bleeding, an expanding or pulsatile hematoma, a brute or a thrill, an absent pulse, a cold ischemic limb. Any of these means urgent vascular control. Involve vascular surgery now. Control hemorrhage with direct pressure or a tourniquet, and go to theatre. CT angiography is for the patient stable enough for imaging, and only when the result will change the operation. Do not send an ischemic limb to the scanner without a vascular plan. Soft signs, a history of bleeding, a small stable hematoma, a proximity wound, pulse asymmetry, a neurological deficit, do not trigger theatre, they trigger measurement. When imaging is indicated and the patient is stable, CT angiography is the first-line test. It defines vessel occlusion, transection, active extravasation, and pseudoaneurysm. It shows the level and length of the injury, its relationship to fracture fragments, and critically, the distal runoff. This is what an actionable finding looks like. Absent contrast in the distal runoff vessels after a knee injury. That is an urgent vascular plan, not an observation. The mirror image matters too. Visible distal runoff supports patency, but it is always read alongside the examination and the ABI, not instead of them. Chapter 3. The 0.9 gait. The ankle brachial index, or the pressure index in the arm, is the screening gait. Doppler systolic pressure in the injured limb, divided by the uninjured limb. Above 0.9 with a normal and reliable examination serial observation. 0.9 or below CT angiography or vascular review. But remember what it is. A gait, not a verdict. It is a screening trigger, not a diagnosis. Here is the tension every examiner probes, told through 2 studies. First, 437 Schatzker 4-6 plateau fractures with symmetric pulses, screened by ABI over 17 years. 82% had a vascular injury and none were missed. Sensitivity 1.0, negative predictive value 1.0, but specificity was 0.06. 3 of every 4 positive screens were false alarms. Second, a meta-analysis of penetrating extremity trauma. There, a normal ABI alone left a 9% post-test probability of arterial injury. It could not exclude it. Only a normal examination, no hard signs and no soft signs, combined with a normal ABI, reached a negative likelihood ratio of 0.01. The difference is mechanism and pretest probability. Blunt plateau fractures with symmetric pulses screen with ABI. A penetrating wound near a vessel, do not lean on the ABI alone. Chapter 4: Vessel, bone or shunt. Once vascular injury is confirmed alongside a fracture, the operation becomes a sequencing decision. Critical ischemia with a stable enough skeleton. Vessel first, restore flow, because nothing else matters until perfusion returns. An unstable skeleton that will kink or tear a repair. Rapid external fixation first, but only when ischemia time allows that brief step, and it means a spanning fixator, not prolonged definitive plating. And the hostile picture: polytrauma, shock, or a transfer needed. Shunt. A temporary intravascular shunt restores perfusion in minutes, buys time for damage control, skeletal stabilization or transfer, and definitive repair follows when it is safe. Every branch ends the same way. Reassess perfusion after every step and think about fasciotomy. The shunt is not a compromise, the cohort data favor it. 213 shunted injuries across 7 level 1 centers, dwell under 24 hours in 86.5%, thrombosis 5.6%, dislodgement 1.4%, and 96.3% limb salvage. In the multicenter cohort comparing sequences, patients who were not shunted had more than twice the compartment syndrome rate, 34% against 15%, and initial orthopedic fixation before vascular repair was associated with higher amputation than initial vascular repair, 20% against 7%. These are retrospective, non-randomized comparisons, association, not proof, but the direction is consistent. Restore flow early, stabilize bone fast, and let the shunt bridge the gap. In the PROOVIT registry, matched controls had roughly 3 times the amputation odds of shunted limbs. This is the definitive repair confirmed. Popliteal flow restored through a reversed great saphenous vein interposition graft, with distal runoff demonstrated on the post-repair CT angiogram. The principles: proximal and distal control, systemic heparinization if it is safe, thrombectomy when indicated, primary repair only for small clean lacerations under no tension, a reversed vein graft for segmental loss, and avoid synthetic graft in a contaminated field. And one omission the examiners hunt for: the vein. A divided major outflow vein causes venous hypertension and limb edema, which worsens compartment syndrome and threatens the arterial repair. In the stable patient with a salvageable limb, repair the major vein. Ligation is acceptable damage control, but then expect marked swelling. It mandates fasciotomy. When both artery and vein are injured, restore arterial inflow first. Chapter 5: After the clamp comes off, skeletal muscle tolerates roughly 6 hours of warm ischemia before necrosis becomes irreversible, and then restoring flow becomes its own danger. The moment the clamp or the shunt comes off, the products of ischemic muscle wash into the circulation: potassium, myoglobin, hydrogen ions, lactate. Hyperkalemia can arrest the heart on the table. Myoglobin blocks the renal tubules, the acidosis deepens, so you preempt it. Warn the anesthetist before reperfusion. Aggressive intravenous fluids, treat the potassium. Monitor creatine kinase and renal function, keep the urine output brisk, and fasciotomy to relieve the swelling you are about to create. And the hardest sentence in this lecture: reperfusing a dead limb can kill the patient. In the moribund, severely deranged patient with a clearly non-viable limb, prolonged ischemia, dead muscle, primary amputation is the safer choice. The whole patient physiology, not the artery, drives that decision. Nor does a patent artery guarantee a saved limb. In one popliteal series after knee fracture or dislocation, delayed amputation was 24% overall, 16% even after successful revascularization. In a larger infrainguinal cohort, 83% of delayed amputations occurred despite adequate perfusion. The muscle, nerve, and soft tissue decided the outcome, not the vessel. Successful revascularization is necessary but not sufficient. This CT shows what the reperfusion era really produces: a tense, swollen deep posterior compartment with an intramuscular hematoma. Compartment syndrome can arrive before repair, after reduction, after shunting, after repair, and despite restored pulses. The early pattern is escalating pain, pain on passive stretch, rising analgesic requirement, paresthesia, and tense compartments. The late findings, paralysis, pulselessness, pallor, must never be the trigger for fasciotomy. If you wait for them, the muscle is already dead. When the risk of missing it exceeds the morbidity of the procedure, prolonged ischemia, reperfusion, combined arterial and venous injury, crush, unreliable examination, prophylactic fasciotomy is the conservative choice.